Hi everyone, this is the Ruby Setup YouTube for CMSC 405 programming languages, and in this YouTube what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing the software that we'll be using for programming in the Ruby programming language. And all told, there are going to be 4 things that we'll be installing in this YouTube. The first is the Java SE development kit. We're going to be installing version 8 update 25 of the Java SE development kit. We need to install the Java SE development kit because it provides the runtime environment that's used by Eclipse, and also 2 other programming languages that we're going to be using throughout the course. Scala and Clojure both use the Java runtime environment. So we're going to be installing the Java SE development kit. Then we're going to be installing Eclipse. Eclipse is going to be the IDE, the integrated development environment that we're going to be using in this course for our programming. And we're going to be using the Kepler version of Eclipse. Then we're going to be installing the language library for Ruby and also the Eclipse plugin for Ruby. Now, throughout the course, for each of the different programming languages that we're going to be using, you will be installing that particular programming language's library as well as an Eclipse plugin for that programming language. Okay, so for each of the programming languages, we'll be installing its language library and we'll be installing its Eclipse plugin. Now, we're only going to worry about Ruby today in this YouTube, but there will be future YouTubes where we'll be installing the language library and the plugin for those languages as well. Now, the language library for each of the programming languages, you may be saying, okay, well, what does that provide me? Well, what that provides you is the ability to use that programming language's classes, its modules, in your programs. It allows you to call that particular language's methods and functions within your programs. Okay, so that's why we're installing the language library. And you might be asking the same thing about the plugin for Eclipse. Well, the reason why we're installing that particular language's plugin is because it makes it easier for us to do programming in Eclipse in that particular language. Okay, so for Ruby, which is the first language we're going to be starting with, we're going to be installing version 1.9.3 of its language library. And then the plugin we can actually install right within Eclipse. We don't have to go out to a website to get access to the plugin for Ruby. Okay, so let's get started, and we're going to start with the Java SE development kit. That's the first thing that we're going to install. And to install it, you're going to want to go out to the Oracle website that's included in the PowerPoint presentation that I just showed you. And by the way, that PowerPoint presentation is available out on the portal on our course shell in the class material page. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Java SE development kit. And by the way, I guess one more thing that I should mention, throughout this YouTube, there are going to be various spots where I ask you to take screenshots, capture screenshots of what you're doing. Okay, so at those spots, you may want to pause the YouTube, get the screenshot of what you're doing, save that screenshot somewhere, and then start the YouTube again and proceed. So pay particular attention to the spots where I ask you to take a screenshot, because you're going to be submitting the screenshots as part of your deliverable for this assignment. Okay, so let's get started with the install of the Java SE development kit. And again, we're going to be installing version 8, update 25 of the Java SE development kit. So I'm going to accept the license agreement, and then I'm going to go down to the executable for Windows 64-bit. Okay, you're going to want to choose whatever executable is appropriate for your laptop. Okay, but for me, I'm going to use the Windows 64-bit executable. So I'm going to download that. I'm going to save it into my downloads directory. It's still saving. Okay, it looks like it's downloaded, so I'm going to go out to my downloads directory, and there it is, the install executable. So I'm just going to run it, and I am more or less going to accept all of the default settings that are offered by the install executable, and that's what I would advise that you do as well. So I'm going to next through these setup screens. Okay, and now at this point we've installed the Java SE development kit. So what I would like you to do before you click the close button is I would like you to capture a screenshot of this screen and save it off somewhere. And after you've done that, you can click on close. And we're going to proceed to the next step, which is installing Eclipse. So for that, you're going to want to go out to the Eclipse website that I provided you. And again, the URLs to all of these websites are included in the PowerPoint presentation that I showed you at the beginning of this YouTube, which is out on the portal. Okay, but we're going to be installing the Kepler version of Eclipse, specifically the IDE for Java EE developers. And again, you're going to want to install the appropriate version of Eclipse based on your laptop. I'm going to be installing the Windows 64-bit. Okay, so I'm going to click on the 64-bit hyperlink. It takes me to this page, and at this point I'm going to click on the download button. And I'm being prompted to save the file, so I'm going to say OK. And I'm actually going to save this file out onto my C drive in my Chestnut Hill folder. And I already have an Eclipse zip file out there, so I'm going to just save right over it. You won't have that. And it's saving. Okay, so it looks like the zip file is fully downloaded now. So I'm going to go out to my C drive where I saved the zip file, my Chestnut Hill folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the contents of the zip file. And the contents of the zip file are now being extracted. Now I have a folder on in the same directory called Eclipse-JEE-Kepler. Okay, I'm going to double click into that directory, and inside of there's an Eclipse folder. I'm going to double click into that, and inside of this folder you can see we have an Eclipse.exe that is the Eclipse program that you want to run, and we are going to use for all of our programming. So what I typically do before I start it up is I like to create a desktop shortcut for it, okay, so that I don't have to double click into all of these folders every time I want to start up Eclipse. So I'm going to create a desktop shortcut, and then I'm going to go out to my desktop. I'm going to move some things around, so bear with me. And there's the shortcut. Okay, so I'm going to double click on it. It's going to start up Eclipse. Eclipse is loading. And it'll take a few seconds. Okay, then it's going to prompt you for a workspace in which you want to save your programs, and I would recommend that you use the default workspace. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name of the workspace to Kepler-2. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I already have an Eclipse workspace on this laptop that I don't want to save my new programs into. I want to create a new workspace folder for them. But like I said, I would recommend that you just go with the default workspace. And this is the workspace where all of your programs are going to be saved. Okay, so let me type in Kepler-2, and I'm going to push on OK. And as you can see, it takes Eclipse a little while to load, but it's loaded now and it's started up, and this is what Eclipse looks like. This is the welcome page, which you're going to see. But now what we're going to do is we're going to shift things around a little bit to set us up for better development in Eclipse. And Eclipse actually has something that's pretty interesting. They're called perspectives. For the different programming languages that you can program in, there's a different perspective that Eclipse offers, that basically different configuration of windows to do development in, one for Java, one for Java EE. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to go into the Java perspective, okay? And you'll see things shift around a little bit inside of the IDE. So what you want to do is you want to go up to the Window drop down and then go to Open Perspective. And then there's a pop-up that appears, and you should see an option for Java. And I want you to select that option. Okay, so now what we're going to do, over on the left hand side of the IDE, you should see this, I don't know what you want to call it, little icon. What we're going to do is we're going to click on the restore button of that icon, and it's going to open things up like this. And this is the Java perspective. You can see we've got different windows. We've got a package explorer. Here's the code editor in the center. We're going to be typing in all of your code. There's a task list over here. Okay, and at the bottom there are windows for problems, Java doc, declaration. In just a moment we're going to open up another window down there at the bottom of the IDE. But what we can also do is we can close this welcome page. We can close that. Okay, so now we're fully in the Java perspective, but there is another window that I would like you to open. So underneath of Window, I would like you to select Show View, okay, and then select Console. Okay, and you should see a console window open at the bottom of the IDE. Okay, and this, in my opinion at least, is the ideal perspective, the ideal view, the ideal configuration of Windows that you want to use for Java development in Eclipse. And that's where we're actually going to start out at in Eclipse, excuse me. Okay, so what I'd like you to do at this point is I would like you to get a screenshot of the Eclipse IDE with this Java perspective open. Okay, so if you want to stop the YouTube, get the screenshot, save the screenshot off, and then come back into the YouTube, that would be great. So I'd like a screenshot of this. Okay, So now we have the Java Development Kit, we have Eclipse up and running. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go out and we are going to get the Ruby binaries, okay? And for that we're going to go to this rubyinstaller.org website that I provided you in the PowerPoint presentation. And we're going to be grabbing the Ruby installer for the 1.9.3 binaries. Okay, the 1.9.3 language libraries. So we're going to be clicking on this link. Okay, and we're going to save the install executable. Okay, and I'm going to save it out into my downloads directory. Okay, and that was quick. It looks like it's been saved into the downloads directory, and there it is. Okay, so we're going to run the install executable. Okay, and basically in the install executable we're going to accept most of the default settings. We are going to select English as our language, okay, accept the license agreement. Okay, now in this window, actually what we're going to do, we are going to make a slight change. We are going to check two checkboxes in this window: add Ruby executables to your path, and associate .rb and .rbw files with this Ruby installation. Okay, so in this particular screen of the install executable, you want to make sure that you check these two checkboxes. Okay, add Ruby executables to your path and associate .rb and .rbw files with this Ruby installation. Okay, and then click on install. Okay, and before you click on finish, I would like you to capture a screenshot, okay, of this particular screen. Alright, so if you want to stop the YouTube, grab the screenshot, save it off somewhere because you will be submitting it as part of this assignment. That would be great. And once you've done that, you can come back into the YouTube and click on finish. And now we have the Ruby language library installed on our laptop. Okay, which means that we can use its classes, we can use its modules, we can call its methods and its functions right within our Ruby scripts. Okay, so now the last thing that we need to do is we need to install the Ruby plugin for Eclipse. Okay, so that it makes it easier for us to do programming in Ruby in Eclipse. So to do that, what we're going to do is go back into Eclipse, go to the help menu, and then sort of towards the bottom select install new software. Okay, and the install window is going to open up. At the top there's a drop down that says work with. You want to open that up, and what you want to do is you want to select underneath all available sites, you want to select Kepler, and then there's an HTTP downloads, etc., etc. You want to select that. And you want to give this window a few moments. You can see the status said pending, but now it changed. Okay, and what we want to do in this center area of the windows, we want to scroll down and we want to go to programming languages, and we want to open that up, and we want to scroll down to where it says Dynamic Languages Toolkit Ruby Development Tools. You want to select that, you want to check it, okay, and then you want to select the next button, okay, and you really don't need to do anything in this window. You can select the next button, and in this window you want to accept the license agreement, but before you push on finish, I would like you to capture a screenshot of this window. Okay, so accept the license agreement, get a screenshot, okay, and then you can click on finish. Okay, and now the Ruby plugin is being installed. Okay, so now in order for the plugin to be useful to you, you actually have to restart Eclipse. So yes, to this prompt where it asks you, would you like to restart now, you say yes. And Eclipse will start up again. Okay, and I'm going to use the same workspace, the workspace Kepler 2. And Eclipse opens up in the Java perspective, okay, which is the perspective that I had set up in the previous time I started up Eclipse. But now what I want to do is I actually want to change that perspective, because now that we've installed the Ruby plugin, guess what? We have a Ruby perspective that we can use, and we want to use it. Okay, so underneath of Window, you select Open Perspective. Okay, and then you go down to Other. Okay, this time you go down to Other. So you go Window, Open Perspective, and then Other. And within the Open Perspective window, you should see towards the bottom a Ruby perspective. You select it, you push on OK, and you should see the windows shuffle around a little bit. Okay, and this is the Ruby perspective. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create our first Ruby project and our first Ruby script. Okay, so we're going to go up to the File drop-down, and we're going to select New, and then we're going to select Ruby Project, and we're going to call this project My First Ruby Project. Okay, now Ruby is a scripting language. Okay. Just like PHP is a scripting language and Perl is a scripting language, so it needs an interpreter in order to run. So this very first time we're setting up a Ruby project, we have to configure the Ruby interpreter. Okay, you won't have to do this again, okay, but you do have to do it now for your first Ruby project. So I'd like you to push on the Configure Interpreters hyperlink. Okay, and then what I'd like you to do in the Preferences window is push the Add button. Okay, and then in the Add Interpreter window, push on the Browse button. And where you want to go out to is your C drive, then Ruby 193, then the bin directory. Okay, so it's C, Ruby 193, bin, and in that bin directory you should see the Ruby executable, ruby.exe. So you want to select that and then push on the Open button. Okay, and then you can push on the OK button. And you should see in the Preferences window now a listing at the top for ruby.exe. So you've successfully added the Ruby interpreter. So I'd like you to get a screenshot of this window. Okay. So get a screenshot of this window, save it off somewhere, and then you can push on OK. And then we're back into the Ruby New Project window. You can push on Next. Okay. And then you can push on Finish. Okay. And underneath of Script Explorer, you now have your first Ruby project. Okay, but what we want to do next is we want to add a Ruby script to that project. So underneath of Script Explorer, okay, select, highlight My First Ruby Project, do a right click, and from within the pop-up that appears you can select New, and then what we're going to select from the next pop-up is Empty Ruby Script. Okay, and we're going to name this script My First Ruby Script. Okay, so we're going to call it My First Ruby Script, and we're going to push on Finish. Okay, and there you can see an empty script in the code editor now in the center of the window. Okay, this is an empty Ruby script, and underneath of the Script Explorer, okay, you can see the actual Ruby script. Underneath of the project, this is the Ruby script, my first Ruby script.rb. Okay, so all of your Ruby files are going to end with the .rb extension. Okay, so what would this programming language be, okay, without us creating the standard Hello World application in it? So that's what we're going to do here. We're actually going to create a couple of Ruby scripts, though, this one and then another little more complex one. So for the Hello World, in your first Ruby script, you're going to start off with the word puts, P-U-T-S, puts, and then a string, Hello World. There you go. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're going to save this script. Okay, at the top of the IDE towards the left, there's a save button. You want to save it. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to run it. So underneath the Script Explorer, okay, you want to select my first Ruby script.rb, do a right click from within the pop-up that appears, select Run As, and then from within the next pop-up that appears, select Ruby script. And down in the console view below, you should see Hello World, and that's your first Ruby script in action. So I would like you to get a screenshot, okay, of this screen right now with your Ruby script, with your one line of Ruby code, and with the output of it down in the console down below. Okay, now that was a pretty easy script. Let's create one that's a little more complicated, a little more fun. Okay, so we're going to go up to the File drop-down option again, and we're going to create a new project. File, New, Ruby Project, and we're going to call this one Book in Stock. Okay, and we're going to click on Next, and then we're going to click on Finish, and there's our second Ruby project. You can see it in the Script Explorer. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an empty Ruby script to the project. So select the project again, then from within the pop-up that appears, select New, and then select Empty Ruby Script. Okay, or yes, Empty Ruby Script, and we're going to call this script Book in Stock. Okay, so now that we have an empty Ruby script loaded in the code editor, okay, where we're going to include some code, and then underneath the Script Explorer there you can see Book in Stock, okay, .rb. There's the Ruby script. Okay, now this next program, like I said, it's a little more challenging, and in it what we're actually going to be doing is creating a Ruby class and then instantiating an object of that class. Okay, Ruby is an object-oriented programming language, so it supports all of the features of an object-oriented programming language, objects and classes, inheritance, etc. Okay, so let's do a little coding together. Okay, so there's our second Ruby script, and it contains a class. And we're going to go into the details of what all this code means, although I suspect that if you, as you were implementing it, you probably recognized, a lot of the stuff that was going on there inside of the class. We're creating some attributes, we're creating a couple of methods, and then down below after the class definition, we're creating an object of it, and then we're calling a method on that object. Okay. We're going to be doing more of this type of coding together in class, but this is our second Ruby script, and we'll go into a lot more detail about what all this means. Okay, but let's save it. Okay, and let's run it. So underneath of the Script Explorer, you want to select Book in Stock.rb, and then do a right click, and then do Run as Ruby script, and then down in the console you should see ISBN : price : 355. Okay, and I would like to ask you to capture a screenshot of this, save this screenshot off somewhere. Okay, and that concludes this YouTube. Hopefully everything went smoothly for you. If it didn't, obviously you can reach out to me, and we'll work through whatever issues you encountered, if any. But like I said, hopefully everything went smoothly for you. So now what you're going to want to make sure you do is you package up all of the screenshots that you took throughout the YouTube, and you also want to make sure that you package up these two Ruby projects. Okay, and to actually get them, where you want to go is out into your Documents directory. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm telling you the wrong thing. You want to go to your C directory, okay, underneath of Users, okay, and then into your own personal directory, and there is my workspace, okay, workspace-Kepler-2. You probably just use the default workspace, but you want to go into the workspace where you saved those projects, okay, and there are the projects Book in Stock and My First Ruby Project. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to zip them both up, both of these projects, include them in a zip file, and then you can upload that zip file as part of this assignment. Okay? Alright, that concludes our YouTube.